Hello, everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. So, today I have a special guest with me. So, the topic for today is the major advancements in technology. Despite all that, the global approach to cybersecurity has remained the same for decades. It's respond and recover. The same vulnerabilities repeatedly are exploited in similar ways, and this trend shows no sign of slowing. So, what exactly is the issue? Is it that it's impossible to defend against these vulnerabilities? Are the hackers just too smart? So, my guest today, hopefully, we're going to discuss how the threat landscape is changing and what to expect from cyber criminals in the months and years ahead, and how to resist them. So, welcome, CritOps.
Good evening. Hope everybody's doing good, and thanks for having me tonight.
Absolutely. So, what is this cyber polygon that we're hearing about? What is that all about?
All right. Well, I guess let me just tell everybody a little bit about myself. My name is Bill, and the company that I work for, what we do is we track nation states cyber threats. We work with other companies to help them build better security, cybersecurity programs, policies. If they are breached, we help them recover. So we do a lot in this space, and a lot of this is stuff that comes across our desk. I've been doing IT for 25 years, and 20 of those years has been in the cybersecurity um, space. So Cyber Polygon. Wow, this has been a question that has come up quite a bit as of late. Cyber Polygon was a tabletop exercise that was conducted by mostly Russian elements back in July. And basically, what they did is they set up red and blue teams. Typically, I participate on the blue teams as a defender, and the red teams are the people that try to break into a corporate environment. So they set up a kind of a makeshift infrastructure, and they had cyber defender teams protecting against this red team, and they gave the defenders 30 minutes to set up their security defenses. So when I was watching this exercise go on, obviously we are gathering intelligence as well, and some of the things that we noticed is that the backdrop for this exercise was staged. It was very much a production environment. You could tell as they panned around the room to the different screens and things like that, that there really wasn't anything going on there. It was just like, people sitting in the chairs and not really doing anything. And one of the big detractors of this exercise was the fact that they didn't show exactly what the bad guys were doing or what the good guys were doing to defend. All they did is gave kind of a running score, and it kind of was really lackluster in the grand scheme of things. On a typical day for me, we see activity from Russia, China, Iran, just to name a few.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's a legitimate battle space. I mean, this is not somebody trying to do a distributed denial of service against Xbox because there was a spat on Call of Duty. That's not what we're defending against. We're,
Right.
we're we're defending against real bad guys. So that all being said, seeing that this was sponsored by a country that is typically a cyber adversary, they have some of the more reputable advanced persistent threat groups out there. Um, this was really interesting. It seemed to me kind of like it was a corporate cyber awareness training. They had this, real Hollywood-esque type of security operations center, they called it, but yet the content of what they were actually saying during the tabletop exercise was really stuff that pertained to people, normal people, like the folks in your audience. So I'm going to touch on some of the things that you can do at home a little bit later in this to help protect yourself. But the the
Awesome.
the big the big takeaway from this was, and what really kind of got our attention was one of the keynote speakers that kicked this off was Klaus Schwab, and Klaus Schwab is kind of the head of the Global Economic Forum, and he was talking about a cyber pandemic that would be more devastating than COVID-19.
Oh my
So
goodness.
so clearly when somebody makes a statement like that, I'm sure I wasn't the only one that was paying attention. I was like, holy smokes, this guy is saying a pretty big thing. And what
Right.
what he described was a cyber attack on a global scale that would impact power grids and financial systems and companies as a whole. And that's a pretty big statement to make, and that it would be required in order to usher in this great reset. So
Right. So what kind of um, changes are you seeing in the behavior of cyber criminals as a result of that?
that's a great question. So we'll go back to March when the US was really inundated with COVID-19. um, there's the old saying, there's no honor among thieves, right? And so we thought that the cyber criminals, those that are out doing, cyber attacks for fun and profit, those types would kind of subside as we were faced with, in my lifetime, the first global impactful type of situation. And they did just the opposite. They were infecting hospitals and putting ransomware on critical medical systems. I mean, people's lives, were impacted by what these folks were doing. And
Right.
when you're in the middle of a global pandemic, your propensity to pay a multi-million dollar ransom to get your systems back online so you can take care of patients is a lot more easier to talk to people about getting that money to the bad guys so that you can get back helping folks. And we saw some pretty big payouts during the course of that. The other side of this is that the people, us, all of us that are on the internet, were inundated with COVID-19 updates with
Right.
links to click. And those links went to malicious software, um, domains, they fake PayPal accounts, fake GoFundMe's, those types of things to have people's good-hearted natures donate funds to those things. So
Yes, you see it all the time.
a lot of fraud happened once they realized that you know this is a global thing and there's so much information being shared. It's going to be very hard for somebody that's not a security person to really filter out those good versus bad links. So that was one of the big trends that we saw earlier this year in regards to that. The primary motivation behind those that purvey ransomware is truly to extract large sums of money from corporations, and specifically uh, corporations that have critical needs, so hospitals, um, municipalities. It's funny, some of the bigger ransomware attacks actually were put on law enforcement and local municipalities. Atlanta City was shut down for a long time. I believe Delaware was. They infiltrated and destroyed a police database that contained years and years and years and years of evidence and reports and things like that. So it's not just hospitals that see this type of attack. It's widespread and very targeted.
Right. So the cloud technologies are gaining momentum in this current time period, especially when remote operations are expanding. So, what are the main threats for companies that use these technologies, and what can they do to address these concerns?
That's a really great question. There's a myth out there that the cloud is secure, and really the cloud is nothing more than a hosted platform. So if you go back to the early days of the internet, everybody and their brother was bringing up web hosting in their garage on servers and just raking in money to do that. In the same way, we see garage band developers. That's what we like to call them, just a bunch of guys getting together and throwing an app up and calling it a cloud-based solution.
Right.
So what we've witnessed is specifically China is really good at this, and there's a China Hopper event that went down that impacted some main um, cloud providers like IBM and Amazon and a few others, just to name a couple. And basically, what they do is tenant hop. They get into a misconfigured tenant, um, and then from there, they use that as a base of operations, a beachhead, if you will, into that environment. And then they start to crawl their way through using vulnerabilities or misconfigurations as their primary method of attack. And what's interesting about that level of an attack is it's very hard to detect because they're literally ghosts in the machine. So it's not like if you had a web server at home or even your PC and somebody was, moving your mouse around or your machine was really sluggish or things just weren't working, you would know something's up. In a big environment like a cloud service provider, it's very difficult for them to really see you because everything is virtualized.
Right. That makes sense. Oh, my goodness. So, What do you think the main targets for the cyber criminals is at this time? Is it companies or is it people? Which sector of that do you think are under the bigger threat, and why do you think that?
Well, so there's two main components to that question, right? The the targets are, I guess, obtained based upon what the mission of the bad guy is. So if you have a nation
Right.
state sponsored hacking organization, they're going to be looking at critical infrastructure. They're going to be looking at cyber espionage. They're going to be looking at how can I get into any type of defense network or something to do with our government. Those are the types of targets they typically enjoy. When you start to look at other types of threats from nation states, specifically when you start to look at many of the operations that China has pulled off, they're looking for intellectual property. So the reason why this is a big deal is if China can extrapolate all of our um,
PTE says, "Take out my mortgage, please." It's
if
funny.
China can pull all of that research and development over into their environments, they can come to market faster because they didn't have to do all the research and development. And this is why, the old joke is that, if you buy something made in China, you'll be buying it again in 2 weeks because it'll fall apart or whatnot. They don't have that intimate knowledge of the product. And so that's a lot of the issue. So they're deeply embedded in academia. They're deeply embedded into corporations with poor cybersecurity. I mean, imagine trying to secure a college campus with all the different students and different levels of technical understanding. I mean, these guys go in there and they steal research, and it's could even be one of the students that's part of it. Um, I just saw where there was a arrest made for a Chinese American person selling um, information to China that worked for one of our defense contractors. So I mean, this
Oh,
stuff is
wow.
pretty easy.
Yeah.
Another big case was there was a Chinese operative that was a um, Marine reservist as well as an NYPD police officer. So he had access to all that intelligence and things like that as well. So that's kind of your nation state side, your actual organized cybercrime. Um, Typically is going for, how am I going to get the fastest payout for my bad deed? And so you'll see ransomware as one. I was watching a video yesterday, it was where they put a specific type of ransomware on a point of sale system, and basically their ransom note was being printed out on the receipt paper, and it's
Oh
just
my goodness.
spewing it all out. Is pretty ingenious. So
Yeah. So, will you discuss the impact of this whole fake news thing on the well-being of businesses and nations, and share your vision on how the situation with disinformation um, will develop, and what we should do to fight against it?
wow, that's a big question. All right, I'm gonna do my best on that one.
I'm
So
slamming them home here, folks.
so yes, the narrative is used as a weapon, right? I think a lot of people, and looking at your audience, a lot of people already are aware of this, that, it depends on which narrative you want to listen to today, which is the right one.
Right.
And so, actual real information, as a human, you have to filter and layer that down to get to that one little nugget of truth, which may not be very important at all, but all the hyperbole and the rhetoric around it, generates sensation. It actually causes emotional responses from people. So if you can harness and leverage that, you can control how people will react to specific headlines in news. You could go so far back that there was a Twitter account for a very prominent person that was hacked, and they put I forget exactly what they wrote in there, but the stock market dipped as a result of that. So information and the distribution of that information, and we have so many social media platforms now. If you start to tell a lie on one and it ripples across and people believe that lie, they're going to take it as the truth. And they call it perceived reality. So whatever that perceived reality is of a specific topic, and I'll use one that's hot right now, and probably going to get a banner for this when I say it, but um, the whole election debate. This is the first time in American history where people actually believe that media calls who the president of the United States is.
Yeah. I've gotten phone calls myself, because CNN said it.
Right. And so when you have people that believe those types of companies, they're going to believe what they say. Well, you know what? President Trump didn't win. And that's what they're going to run with. And if you go against that, people start arguing over it. And I mean, you can see that playing out right now. I mean, they've had massive protests in DC last weekend, um, where both sides were there, and it was, yelling and shoving and insulting each other and doing crazy stuff. Um, but the reality is that The election hasn't really been called by any official body. So there's more to come on that. And apparently, you want to talk about the cyber crime of it all is
Right. Of the decade.
right. I mean, you're looking at corruption on the electronic level that is so deep. I mean, when you're voting for one person, the machine is flipping that vote and putting it for the other person. And that didn't happen with just the presidential election. That happened at local government levels too. So a lot of these people that think, well, hey, I'm just going to focus on my local government, I'm safe there. If you're using these devices, not so much. So you really have to be aware of what and how you're doing things. So look at things, look at what's probably in your purse or on your desk right now. Everybody carries one of these little devices around in their pocket every day. That little device does your banking, it does your social media, it
Absolutely.
does your calendaring, it'll track you, tell everybody where you are within 1 meter of accuracy. It can take pictures, it can do recordings. I mean, this is the perfect spy device.
Right.
And if that thing sends out an alert that says, hey, we saw this a couple of years ago, if you remember, I think it was Hawaii got like an inbound missile alert through their emergency notification system.
Right.
I mean, how crazy is that? I mean, people were literally throwing their kids down manholes to protect them. So that's the power of this information and disinformation and fake information. I mean, these are things that can cost people their life or their livelihood, depending on how they react to the
Right.
information.
That's interesting that you brought that up because every time, I'm not an iPhone girl, I'm an Android girl. So every time my phone goes through an update, I check because there are programs that automatically, when it's updated, that are installed. So I go through and I check to see what's different, um, what was installed with this latest update, and if it's something that I think is beneficial or not. And if I don't trust it, then I'll remove it um, from the phone. Um, there was someone that said there was an app that got installed on your phone that would let you know if you were close to another person that had the condition, right? Um, and I went and looked on my phone, and it actually was there with the update. Of course, it's turned off, but who knows if that's really the way it is.
Yeah, you have to be real careful with those automatic updates, and you're spot on. I mean, don't accept or allow control of any application that you have not requested. I mean, that's
Or vetted or whatever.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ways people can get into phones and do just that. And on top of that, legitimate applications all have, little secret things that they do in the backdrop and this and that. And if you're not real sure what's going on there, then it's probably in your best interest to turn off the stuff that can cause you the most sensitive data loss, access to different containers within your phone, your camera, your microphone. Those are all types of things. It's not spy. It's not a spy movie, folks. They literally can turn your camera on and your microphone on remotely. That's legitimate.
Yeah,
And,
there's, a couple of people have brought up that they think their phone is listening to them because you'll be having a conversation with someone and then the next thing you know, you get an ad for that same thing. So,
well, I'll give your audience a little fun thing to do. Download um, on YouTube. You can download the what's that thing called? I got it right on the tip of my tongue. The LRAD noise. So LRAD is long range acoustical device. It's a god awful noise that they use for crowd control. And if you think somebody's listening into your phone, just play that and put your phone up next to the speaker. I'm certain they'll stop immediately.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and there's no way that you can know. I mean, they used to have, and if everybody notices on laptops and phones and things like that, when your camera was active, a little red light would come on. Not so much anymore.
Right.
So you have to ask yourself why. And there's a lot. I mean, in some of the cases that I've worked, we've actually had to put software on systems to turn cameras on and to turn microphones on in order to catch, real crime being committed. Um, and that's, something that you need a lot of documentation to do and authorization to do. It's not something that I would tell anybody to do. So for those of you thinking that would be really neat to do to your wife or girlfriend, probably a very bad idea. So don't do it. But for legitimate use, you can tell, because one of the ways, and this is maybe a side issue, but one of the things that we come across, when we're doing a case is prove I was at the keyboard, prove I was there doing it. Well, how do you do that? Well, you turn the camera on and take a picture of them, and you log their keystrokes on their device and say, well, there you are, and here's your credentials. So it was you, and you can't really refute that at that point. So
Right. Well, so I watched a video the other day, and it was the mayor of Chicago. And then it was brought up that it could have been a deep fake issue. So, can you touch on the development of technology such as deep fake? That's when a person's image or voice is replaced with that of another, and if it's predicted to exacerbate the fake news situation that we're all in.
yeah, that's a another really good question. That technology is uh it has been used. It's in its infancy. So it's not something that is easy to do right now. There are certain things out there that you can use to like put a different person's face. Like, for instance, if I had this software right now, we could set it up and our faces would be like, a tiger or whatever. And as we talk, that avatar's mouth movements and eye movements and things like that would all coincide. So the technology is definitely there. I mean, anybody that's seen Mark Zuckerberg on, testifying in front of Congress, that guy looks very, very odd. And
Very, very cyborgish.
a lot of people have made comments on that.
Yeah.
But they've done deep fakes with Barack Obama. They've taken a lot of his content, and basically you use AI to thread together sentences and things like that you want a person to say, and then the computer matches after the algorithm studies how they talk and what they do. Um, It'll match that motion to the words that it's harvested. And so you could have, like President Trump say something that he wouldn't normally say. And it would be very difficult for the normal person to understand that that's really not him doing that. So, yeah, I absolutely believe that that will be used as a weapon in the future. And it's kind of frightening.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. So, because of the situation in the country right now, this has forced a lot of companies to change the way they um, conduct operations. Do you think that it's making the utilities in the country more vulnerable to cyber attacks?
Well, you're talking about infrastructure that's very, very old. I mean, we're still dependent on major transformers that would require almost 18 months to 2 years to build, not in this country. So that would have to be shipped overseas. So if one of those main transformers were to go down as a result of a cyber attack, that'd be a real bad day for a lot of folks.
Absolutely.
So what we see is, I can go back. There's two use cases where a small co-op utility was hacked by the Russians in Vermont, and then another one in Rye, New York, where they took over a hydroelectric dam and compromised the internal systems there as well. So, I mean, these beta runs on these smaller utilities that typically don't have the budgets of your big grid providers are telling, and this has been going on for several years now. So there has been a push to harden the grid against not only cyber attack but also electromagnetic pulse attacks and those sorts of RF type of activities, like from the sun, coronal mass ejection, I guess is what it's called. But the thing is that, from a cyber perspective, cyber needs power. So if you're
Right.
going to take the grid out with a cyber attack, your cyber attack is kind of over when the grid goes down. So
That's
it
true.
it has to be one of those deals where they can get inside the grid computers and maybe time bomb with malicious software. And you're talking not your ransomware type of an attack. You're talking something on the scale of some type of logic attack where actual chips can be fried. I was working on a case the other day. It's not a cyber crime case, but a case where there's some oddities. And basically, this company, they have several sets of dynos throughout the world, and these dynos spin up the product, and they get vibration information and things like that. Well, we were asking, if we could go with maybe a air gap environment for this product, because, if you're air gapped, obviously bad guys can't get there. They'd have to physically attack that infrastructure. And so just out of curiosity, I thought that this dyno software was just like for logging the different data elements that were happening on the dyno. And the guy said, no, you control everything for that dyno through this one application. I was like, oh boy, here we go. So so yeah, all your manufacturing, your next gen manufacturing plants are all using integrated computer systems or SCADA or Internet of Things, and security is very weak on those. And organizations that have not built in layers of defense to protect those environments could be asking for a lot of trouble coming down the road. So we like to tell our clients that um, having dedicated segmented environments that are heavily firewalled with a lot of intrusion detection built in to protect those robots and different types of machines that are building products away from internet, like zero internet connectivity. And then when they have people come on site, that they only use software that's been scanned by security and approved to be put on there. We had a guy try to impersonate a worker from Siemens. He actually got the shirt off the internet and was trying to get in to attack one of our customers' um, Siemens controllers. And why is that important? Well, Siemens controllers were the ones that were used when Stuxnet came out, where they fried all of the centrifuges for the uranium enrichment project in Iran. And it just literally spun them so fast that they disintegrated. And so, some people say, well, how did they get in there? Well, they threw USB drives out in the parking lot and somebody plugged one into a computer on the inside, and that was all it needed.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Yeah. Oily made a comment. We have smart meters, which, in her opinion, makes our power system even more vulnerable.
sure. Anything that's smart, anything that is remotely accessible can always be controlled by somebody other than the authorized user. And
Right.
people really need to, they really need to understand that, and including cars. There's footage out there where hackers took over, I think it was a Jeep Cherokee, and were controlling the brakes and the gas and the steering. So, I mean, think about that on a mass scale. We got
Oh
what, like,
my goodness. I
anybody
could
want to
not
get in my
imagine.
self-driving car? No, no, thanks. I'm good. I'll walk. I appreciate it though.
Yeah. Oh
Te-
my goodness.
Tesla cars that can evade tickets, all this crazy stuff. And while the technology is really intriguing and people are like, oh, I want to get that next best tech, tech, they can't really understand what risk they're putting themselves in. Like, so the smart home controls your security, controls
Right.
your thermostat, controls all the different elements within your home. So imagine if somebody, we'll just do like a prank. Imagine if somebody turned your thermostat off and you're in one of these states that, regularly sees -20 degree temperatures, and you're away for a couple of weeks. How do you think those pipes are going to do when you get back home? Probably
Yeah,
not
not
so good.
good. Yeah.
Right, right. Or turn off your furnace, and now your home's cold, all your kids are cold. Or do the opposite, turn everything up high, and now you've got a huge power bill or a gas bill. And then unfortunately, people have hacked the Ring door cameras. They've hacked those, and we're spying on people. They can turn security systems off, specifically cameras that are connected to the internet. They can do all this stuff. And obviously you have to get somebody's attention to do that. But the point is that people are buying these things off the shelf, going home and reading the simple instructions, and then that's it. They walk away from it because it's working. Hey, look, it's on my phone. Look, isn't this nice? This is awesome. And they think it's good, and they're done. Other things, like people have hacked baby monitors where they have the video of the kids and
Yeah.
do cringy, creepy things there. What other ones? TVs. Your TV can actually get ransomware. Did anybody know that?
I
So
did
bad.
not know that. I
Yeah,
didn't It's something that you don't even think about, you
yeah.
know?
Your TV can be hacked, and you can have ransomware put on that. So yeah, they've even put ransomware on ATMs. So
Wow.
it's not uncommon. So if it's got a keyboard or a punch pad and a screen, just know that the security is something that can be compromised if the back end is not properly protected.
Right. So, are there any advice you can give the regular people in my audience of things we need to watch out for? Um,
Sure. Yeah. So default anything is bad. So if you buy like a wireless access point to put in your house so your kids can connect and do all that stuff, make sure you go in and change the passwords. There's actual lists of these default passwords that are out there. So it's super easy for even your neighbor, if you're not getting along with him or her, to
right.
hack into your environment and either steal internet from you or cause you a lot of hate and discontent. Um, kids phones, make sure your kids phones have password on them. Always thumb in, even if it's just a 4-digit code, it's better than nothing, because it's actually kind of hard, unless you're a professional, to break into a phone. So phones are pretty tough cookies. In fact, some of you might remember the FBI was asking Apple to give them the secret codes to get into the iPhones that they have.
Right. I remember that.
And Apple's like, yeah, good luck with that. So, you really password protect your phone is really important. Um, if you really want to take it up a notch, look into buying something like a home firewall. These are devices that actually keep bad people from getting into your environment. Most home firewalls typically have a deny all and allow everything out. So only the people inside the home can go out and do whatever they want to do on the internet. But if anybody's trying to get into those systems that are inside the home, they get blocked. Um, as people get frustrated, they tend to lighten up on the firewall rules, and they become useless over a period of time. So you gotta be a little bit strict on that. But
Right.
antivirus for your phone, antivirus for your computers, those are all very important things. And if your antivirus is a decent one, a lot of times they have plugins for like your mail client. So if somebody's trying to send you one of these bad links, um, it'll detect that it's a bad link and tell you, hey, don't click that. The other thing is there's no Nigerian prince sending you millions of dollars. You're just not that special. I'm sorry to tell everybody that, but
Oh, come on now.
yeah, no.
Oh my goodness.
And
Yeah.
I've collected quite a few over the last couple of weeks. Um, so
Absolutely.
it's yeah, it's an old and tried thing, but you know what, they make almost $800 million a year scamming people.
Right, right.
The other
Yeah,
thing that I'll tell you folks is that Microsoft is never going to call you and tell you that your computer's doing bad things on the internet and they need to log into your computer and fix it. That's a scam. So
right.
don't fall for that.
Yeah, and the world ends, everything blows up, and then you hear, "Do do do do. We've been trying to reach you about your auto insurance
Right,
or the
exactly.
warranty on your vehicle."
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And people will do that. I've even had scammers call me up.
Right,
Uh,
Christy? No, no, no prints. Nope.
and this one guy, he was a Indian speaking fellow, and he proceeded to tell me that there was a warrant out for my arrest and that we needed to, uh, try to solve this over the phone immediately. Well, first and foremost, warrants and solving that over the phone don't jive if you know anything about law enforcement. And so the guy told me that I had uh, been tax evading and that he was working for the IRS, FBI, CIA, NSA, and
All those initials, huh?
yeah. And I was like, wow, you're like the most special of special agents. So I hung up, and he called me back, and then he lost his professional tone, and he got a little bit more threatening, and then he actually threatened to harm my family.
Oh no.
So they were dissolved through some technical means and reported to the FBI, and yeah, but they'll push hard like that. The bad guys, when you're on the phone with people, the bad guys will create urgency and fear in you.
Mm,
And if you're hearing that on the phone, you need to hang up the phone immediately. And if you've given out any personal information at all, social security numbers, bank account numbers, credit card numbers, you need to call your banks immediately and have them put a stop on your credit cards. And then finally, the last thing is that you cannot pay your taxes with Google Play cards or Amazon gift cards. The IRS just doesn't take those. So if they're asking you for those things, it's a scam. Please don't do that. So
right. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. There are some crazies out there, that's for sure.
sure.
My memory, does your memory fill up with blocked numbers? Because there was a period of time where the IRS was calling me, the Social Security office was calling me, the warranty on your car was calling me, and all those numbers that came up, I blocked every one of them. Block, block, block.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I have quite the list myself, and it seems like every time you block one,
Right.
10 more will call you. And some folks might be asking themselves, how do they get my number? And it's a really good question. You know, because we are on social media, you're putting your number out there whenever you're putting the number in the Facebook for your, and they'll tell you, we'll never share your information with anybody else. Wink, wink, wink.
Right. Right.
Don't believe that. Data is valuable, and those that are collecting data will sell it to the highest bidder. That's a fact. So be real careful where you put your phone numbers and things like that. Obviously, in order to set up your bank account, when you're there in person with the teller, they'll ask you what phone in case we have a problem, fraud can call you, that sort of thing. Um, that's obviously legitimate. You're in the bank's office and you're talking to a person on the other side where all the money is. So you have a pretty good sense to know that that person is probably legit bank teller. Whereas on the phone, you have no clue.
Right.
So the banks will never call you and ask you for those types of information because it is very sensitive information. And a lot of people walk around like, why would anybody want to hack me? I don't have anything. Yes, you do. Your your whole digital ID is valuable. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff to think about. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So, does anyone in the audience have any questions for our guest? This has been a very, very interesting and intriguing conversation. And a lot of it is stuff that you don't think about in your day to day, goings on. So, um, I want to give everyone a chance to see if you have any questions, anything that you can think of. Give it a couple of seconds.
Sure.
I absolutely appreciate you going over this topic. Um, I've been seeing it come up everywhere, um, on the internet, the YouTube, the Facebook, Twitter, all that sort of thing. And I really didn't have a very vast understanding of what it was about. So I appreciate you very much.
No problem. Glad to be able to help out. Hopefully no one is having some kind of brain seizure from digesting all this. That was a lot of information tonight.
Yep. Rescue Boss has a question. He said, do you have any recommendations on software that we should look for to add to our computers, antivirus or spyware or anything like that?
Well, I think if you use a top brand, you'll probably be okay for most. It's hard to tell you what to get because I don't know what your computer system is, whether you're running the latest version of Windows 10 or some Windows 95 or whatever, and believe it or not, people actually still do that, which is kind of crazy. But uh, suffice it to say, they do, and it's bad. But uh, if it's a legitimate company like a McAfee, Symantec, Viper, just to name a couple. Um, a lot of people use AVG. I think if
Right,
you're going to invest in an antivirus solution, you should look and see if they have bundled packages. A lot of times they'll give you a license for your PC and one for your phone. And I think that's really where there's a big gap is phones typically don't do antivirus very well, and they should because they're replacing, they're replacing the computer in most people's lives. I mean, people that
right,
can only afford, you know, um, an internet bill or a cell phone bill, they got to
right,
pick which one. Most
right.
times
And
they're
it's
going to go with the
basically
cell phone.
a small computer in your pocket is what it
Abs-
is.
absolutely, it is.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Norton, Spybot, malware bytes. I'm not familiar. The Norton I've heard of, but
Yeah, Norton antivirus is an old and tried and true. Um, Spybot Search and Destroy. That's an older one. Uh, not really one that I would say would be my top pick. Malwarebytes has come a long ways. They are getting very very prominent in the industry. So Malwarebytes is a good one as well. E5C again is kind of along that Spybot kind of genre. It's a what we would call a second tier solution. It's usually less expensive and not as good. So um,
yeah, I understand that completely, Kaylin. Um, you know, there are a lot of people out there that the phone is all they use. So whatever information that you put in there needs to be protected.
yep. So
I haven't heard of that we brute. I don't know
web
what
brute.
that is. Oh,
What?
WebRoot. Okay.
Yeah, WebRoot. I believe I think that's an open source one, if I'm not mistaken. But there's
Okay.
some open source stuff. ClamAV is one. There's several other ones, but again, they don't really back the products as much. The support is pretty much volunteer, and they might lag behind some of the other ones. I use ClamAV on Linux systems quite a bit back when it was you know actively being developed, and I believe it was bought out by a big name company not too long ago, and they kind of just took the good parts of ClamAV and made their own. So
Right. Okay. Well, all right. This was there was a lot of information presented tonight for everyone, and it's going to take a while to digest a lot.
I say folks should go and buy you a cup of coffee. I've been watching that stream across here.
Yep, I figured out how to do that. Is it annoying?
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, I figured out how to do it, and I was like, "Woohoo! Look at there."
Well, I'm happy that you reached out and wanted to talk about this. It's kind of my thing, so really glad to share the information, and hopefully it'll help some folks. And um, you know,
Absolutely. Well, all right, everyone. We are going to close out the chat for tonight, and I appreciate everyone coming and joining us. And I hope that you learned something, and that some of the right seeding folders. That's good stuff right there. And I enjoyed it very much, and hopefully we can do it again on another topic. And until then, thanks everybody, and have a good night.
have a good night, everyone. Be safe.